The richest men in the world are all moving to Miami right now, but they didn't build it. They're competing for something that 5 men already created. Jeff Bezos didn't drain the swamps. Ken Griffin didn't map the skyline in Brickell, and they didn't turn a retirement town into a global tech and finance capital. They showed up after the risk was gone, after the land already had value and the city had gravity. Everyone's talking about the new money, but none of it exists without 5 men you've probably never heard of. Not the billionaires arriving now, the ones who built the city those billionaires are arriving to. They didn't inherit Miami. They invented it with sheer grit, out of swamplands, out of ships, out of car dealerships and cocktail napkins. Between them, they built the skyline, the culture, the cruise industry, and the business engine that made this city worth moving to in the first place. And when you understand what each of them built, you understand why the richest people in the world are now fighting to live in a city that 50 years ago, nobody even took seriously. So let's begin. In 1967, a 34-year-old developer from Pittsburgh named Don Soffer looked at 785 acres of mangrove swamp in northern Miami-Dade County. He saw a city when nobody else did. The land was submerged, no roads, no zoning, no name. It had no reason to exist, but he put down cash anyways. $6 million, about $7,000 an acre for land that didn't even technically qualify as land. Then he does something that most people would never even think to do. He sits down at a restaurant with his partner, Eddie Lewis, pulls out a cocktail napkin, and they sketch a city. High-rise condos, a golf course, a country club, a shopping mall at the center, and he names it Aventura. That means Spanish for adventure because that's exactly what it was. Metro-Dade County approves the plan in 1969. They built 23,900 condominium units, a fire station, a library, a causeway, everything. By 1970, construction began. By 1977, there was already 4,000 residential units and a Robert Trent Jones designed golf course. In 1983, Aventura Mall opens, and it's the biggest and most profitable shopping centers in America. By 1995, Aventura officially becomes a city. The same land Don bought for a few $1,000s an acre is now selling for as much as $2 million an acre. Think about that. He didn't just develop the land, he created value where none existed. He turned swamp into a city and then watched the world price it in decades later. Don Soffer died in July 2025 at 92 years old. They named the main boulevard after him. That's how Miami starts. 5 years later, another man makes a bet that looks irrational. An Israeli immigrant named Ted Arison buys a retired ocean liner called the Empress of Canada. And its price was $1, but it had debt. $5 million of debt on the books. That's the part everyone buries. He has real risk, skin in the game. He renames it the Mardi Gras, bases it out of the port of Miami, and on its first voyage, in front of a ship full of travel agents, he runs it aground and it's stuck on a sandbar. Before it even leaves the channel, that's how Carnival Cruise Line begins. A complete failure. And it was a debt-loaded ship literally stuck in the sand in front of the exact people who are supposed to sell it to Middle America. Most people would shut it down, but Arison doesn't. He sees something that nobody else sees. Cruising was built for the wealthy, and he wanted to flip that model and democratize it for the middle class. And when the ship has to sail slowly to conserve fuel, he fills the time with casinos, discos, nightclubs. Without even realizing it, he invents the modern cruise experience, which might be a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. By 1987, Carnival goes public. By the 1990s, it becomes the largest cruise operator in the world. Today, it's carried over 100 million passengers, and the port of Miami becomes the busiest cruise port on the earth. All because of Arison and what he built from the ground up. With $1, one failure, one insight, and an industry gets rewritten in real time. Now, here's where Miami shifts from infrastructure to identity because a city isn't real until the world takes it seriously. Enter Norman Braman. Everyone knows him as a luxury car dealer. I'm talking BMW, Bentley, Rolls-Royce. That's the surface story of his come up. The real story is what he did in the early 2000s. He helps convince the organizers of Art Basel, the most prestigious art fair in the world, by the way, to launch an American edition in Miami Beach. Think about what Miami was in 2002. A party town, a retirement destination, beaches, nightlife, and not so much cultural gravity on the global stage. Art Basel changes that overnight. Now every December for 1 week, Miami becomes the center of the global art world. Collectors fly in from every major financial capital. Hundreds of millions of dollars move through the city. Status shifts, perception shifts, and once perception shifts, capital floods in. Braman also funds the Institute of Contemporary Art. He contributes tens of millions to build cultural infrastructure. After surviving cancer himself, he funds a major cancer center at Mount Sinai. He doesn't just build businesses, he builds legitimacy. Soffer created the land, Arison created the industry, Braman creates the relevance. Now look at the modern Miami skyline. All of that glass, all that density and that vertical expansion, that's Jorge Pérez. He starts as a broke college student, funding an art collection with poker winnings. Not family money, not institutional backing, but poker. Then he founds the Related Group in 1979. Over the next decades, his company develops more than 100,000 residences. He sells over 50 billion in property. That's billion with a B. I'm talking about Icon Brickell, W Miami, Baccarat residences. If you've seen a photo of Miami in the last 20 years, you've seen Pérez's work. That nickname, the Condo King, isn't just his branding, it's geography. But here's what most people in Miami do not understand. While building the skyline, he's also building culture. That small art collection funded by his poker winnings, he turns it into one of the most serious private collections in the country. In 2011, he donates $40 million to put his name on the Pérez Art Museum in Miami. Now the skyline isn't just built, it's anchored in steel and culture in the same frame, and here's his hidden history. For years, Pérez worked closely with Donald Trump on major developments in New York. The relationship ended publicly when Pérez refused to support Trump's proposed border wall. That's not business, that's a line he drew in the sand. And then there's a story that explains the entire city. Armando Codina. In the early 1960s, he arrives in Miami at just 14 years old. He's alone with no parents, no English, and no money. Part of Operation Pedro Pan, a mass exodus of Cuban children that were sent to America. He grows up in an orphanage. He moves through foster care. When his mother finally arrives, she can't work. So at 16, he does. He gets a job at a bank and he starts to notice inefficiencies in medical billing. He starts a company like a real entrepreneur, then he sells it. That was his first fortune before 30. Then he pivots into commercial real estate, not the glamorous kind, the invisible kind. Office parks, industrial complexes, business corridors. In 1980, he hires a 27-year-old named Jeb Bush, who later becomes the governor of Florida. That's the level he was operating on. Then downtown Doral, 250 acres, 5,000 residential units, 1 million square feet of office space, government centers, schools, an entire ecosystem. He didn't build the postcard, he built the engine, and that's the line that explains everything. Miami didn't ask who his parents were. It asked if he was willing to work. That's the city, that's the filter. They arrived when choosing Miami was considered strange, when it wasn't a tech hub, definitely not a wealth capital, and not a serious city. They built it anyways. Over 50 years and one deal at a time, one risk at a time, and now the richest people in the world are all showing up. Bezos, Griffin, Zuckerberg, all of them competing for space in something that they didn't build. That's the part nobody mentions. The new money reshapes the city, but it did not create it. It inherited it. And if you understand that, you stop chasing where money is going and start looking where nothing exists yet. That's where the real leverage is. Miami didn't start with wealth, it started with vision. A napkin, a grounded ship, and an art fair. A poker game, a 14-year-old boy stepping off a plane from Cuba, building a fortune alone. That's where cities are built. That's how power is created. The real question is where you will find your fortune. It's gonna be where nobody is even looking yet. It might be in Miami, it might be somewhere else. Let me know in the comments below.